They wait and then they die, never receiving the help that modern medicine is fully capable of providing. Suspended between hope and despair. What does the transplant waiting list really look like in Kazakhstan? There are people who offer to sell a kidney or part of their liver for a set price. Some have been prosecuted for it, but the law is clear. This is strictly forbidden. Kazakhstan is steadily moving away from living donations altogether to eliminate financial incentives on both sides of the equation. The risks of living donation. Why deceased donors may not only save lives, but protect the dignity of the living too. When couples or family members aren't compatible due to blood type or other immunological factors, cross-transplantation, where multiple donor-recipient pairs are matched through a centralized registry, can be a life-saving alternative. So how are organs from deceased donors allocated, and who gets them? I'd be glad if my organs helped someone. I live a healthy lifestyle, I work out. I don't see a problem here. On the contrary, I think it's a good thing if tomorrow my heart is beating and continues to live on in someone else's chest. The same goes for the kidneys and liver. In Kazakhstan, hundreds of adults and children are waiting for a second chance at life. Some were born with congenital conditions. Others found themselves in need of a transplant due to illness or injury. Their stories are different, but what unites them is the wait. As of now, there are 4,199 patients on the national transplant waiting list. The vast majority, more than 3,800, are awaiting kidney transplants. About 200 patients need liver transplants, and 150 are waiting for hearts, including those listed for combined heart-lung procedures. Among them, 109 children, nearly 2.5% of the total list. Each year, more than 300 people are removed from the waiting list. In 2024, that number was 335. Tragically, most were taken off the list because they didn't survive the wait. Dostbol Yusubov is just 35. He has his whole life ahead of him. But for a full year, he waited for a kidney. The list moved slowly, too slowly. For a year, I was on dialysis 3 times a week. Then my brother said he'd give me his kidney. At 9 a.m., we were wheeled into the operating room. By 5 in the evening, I came to, disoriented, emerging slowly from anesthesia. The first thing I asked was how my brother was, and the doctors told me, "He's fine, don't worry." Before the diagnosis, Dostbol lived an ordinary life. He worked in construction. He and his wife were raising 3 children. When we found out I was sick, my kids, my wife, my parents, they all told me the same thing. Don't be afraid, it's going to be okay. How are you feeling? Everything okay? Yes. His vitals are stable. He's almost ready for discharge. He no longer needs dialysis. While the risks for living donors are low, they're not zero. And that's precisely why expanding posthumous organ donation is so vital, even though, to this day, it remains clouded by stigma, misinformation and fear. It's important for the public to understand that not everyone in intensive care qualifies as a posthumous organ donor. Donation is only possible in very specific cases. Typically, when a patient has suffered a massive stroke or a traumatic brain injury that is incompatible with life. Only then can a diagnosis of brain death be made. At that point, all neural activity ceases, and the body no longer receives any signals from the brain. There is no possibility of recovery, no return to life.
Религия абсолютно здесь не против. Как раз-таки сейчас
Religion has no objection to organ donation. On the contrary, some of the world's leaders in transplantation are Islamic countries. You might be surprised to hear that Iran currently ranks first. Highly religious Spain too leads the world, with bold signs in churches that read, "God doesn't need your organs, give them to the living." What does this tell us? That is a righteous act. We Kazakhs are Muslims. In our faith, we call it sawab, a blessing. If I can save 7 lives after I pass, what greater legacy could I leave behind? Kazakhstan has taken strong measures to eliminate corruption in the field of organ transplantation, laying the groundwork for a more transparent system. When a patient is admitted to intensive care, neither the attending physician nor our team knows their wishes regarding organ donation. That information becomes accessible only after a formal diagnosis of brain death is made by a panel of specialists. At that point, and only then, can we submit a request to the Republican Electronic Health Center to check if the individual had registered consent or refusal. Recently in Astana, we had a potential posthumous donor, a woman. Only after initiating the process did we discover that she had in fact documented a refusal while she was still alive. That information isn't visible to us until we officially request it. Let's say a donor becomes available in October. No one knows in advance who will receive that organ. There is this misconception that doctors might withhold care to harvest organs. But think about it. The heart could end up in Astana, the liver might be flown to Almaty, the kidneys to another region altogether. Why would a doctor in October, knowing full well that the organs will be allocated elsewhere, do anything unethical? It simply doesn't make sense. Even we as surgeons don't know in advance where the organs will go. Unlike living donation, which is carefully planned, posthumous organ donation is an emergency procedure and every decision must be made fast. When a life ends, the race to save another begins almost immediately. We input all lab and diagnostic data into the national transplant system. From there, matches are determined based on blood type, immunological markers and other critical indicators. The selection is entirely algorithmic. It's not about who the person is. There's no influence, no bias. The system chooses a match, and more often than not, it's an ordinary patient in need. Doctors involved in the removal of organs are barred from participating in the transplant itself. This safeguard is designed to eliminate any suspicion of bias in how organs are allocated. In Kazakhstan, the sale of human organs is a criminal offense, punishable by imprisonment. As of today, over 104,000 people in Kazakhstan have officially opted out of posthumous donation. Just over 8,000 have registered consent. But Kazakhstan follows a principle known as explicit consent, meaning that even if a person did not object to donation during their lifetime, doctors are still required to seek approval from the next of kin after death. Many in the medical community believe this extra step is unnecessary and ultimately harmful.
закон, которого нет в мире вообще.
We have a law unlike any other in the world. We have combined two opposing principles, consent and refusal, into the same law. I told our leadership at the Ministry of Health at that time, "Do you realize we are now the first country to pass something like this?" Now people come to me confused. What are we supposed to write, consent or refusal? Under current law, you're expected to submit both. What we need is a clear, consistent and coherent law, one that doesn't contradict itself and doesn't create more confusion than clarity. Doctors say that one deceased donor can save up to 7 lives. But there is another critical benefit. When posthumous donation works, living donors no longer have to put themselves at risk. These complex surgeries, the ones that push doctors and families to the edge, are only necessary because there aren't enough deceased donors. Around the world, most living donor transplants happen out of necessity, not choice. When we operate on a living donor, the margin for error is 0. But if a functioning posthumous donor system were in place, we'd only be operating on the recipient. The responsibility and the risk would shift entirely to the side of the patient who truly needs it. We're talking about treatments that are well established, with outcomes that are nothing short of remarkable. 5-year survival rates are over 90%. 10-year survival is around 80%. These are patients who, by all expectations, wouldn't have lived another year. But 10 years later, they're alive. Not just alive, They're working, contributing, starting families of their own.
Умереть в течение года, они через 10 лет 80% их живут. Не только живут, они работают, приносят пользу, рожают детей.
The transplant waiting list grows by roughly 500 people each year. Today, nearly 9,000 Kazakhs are on dialysis, doing everything they can to hold on until their turn finally comes. On the surface, dialysis is a safe procedure, but the truth is, sudden death can still occur. We've had cases where patients passed away right in the middle of treatment. Sometimes someone will walk into my office visibly shaken because the person on the bed next to them didn't make it through the session. That kind of fear brings people in quickly. When it comes to liver disease, the numbers are staggering. If we look at patients with cirrhosis caused by hepatitis B, C, D, or alcohol-related conditions, there are over 53,000 patients currently being monitored. These aren't distant forecasts. Many of them are just one step away from full liver failure. Any one of them could be added to the transplant list tomorrow. In 2023, Kazakhstan registered 42 potential organ donors who had been officially declared brain dead. Of those, only 7 families gave consent for donation. In 2024, the number of potential donors rose to 82, but only 10 became actual donors. One of them was 18-year-old Maxim Voynush. He was riding his moped when it collided with a car. Maxim spent 9 days in intensive care before doctors confirmed brain death. When his family was asked about donation, they faced the hardest decision of their lives and said yes. They chose to give life to others. And in time, they even found the strength to meet the people their son had saved. They listened to Maxim's heart, still beating inside its new recipient. You can't witness something like that without tears. His sister placed a stethoscope against the man's chest. And there it was, her brother's heart, still alive. Maxim's heart now beats in the chest of a 58-year-old man from Shymkent. One of his kidneys went to a 40-year-old man in Turkestan Regional Hospital. The other was transplanted into a 16-year-old boy in Astana. His liver was given to a 58-year-old woman at the Sysganov Surgery Center, a storied institution that recently marked its 80th anniversary. That's my mentor, Vladimir Alexandrovich Vishnevsky, the man who taught me how to operate on the liver. I went to him and said, I want to start doing liver transplants. He said, no problem. That day we did 8 liver surgeries together. Kazakhstan's transplant surgeons are trained in some of the most advanced clinics in the world. They recently performed a rare triple kidney swap, a 3-way paired kidney exchange. This procedure is used when a donor and their intended recipient, often close relatives, are incompatible due to blood type. A solution was first proposed in 1986, a cross-donation model where unrelated donor-recipient pairs are matched with others in the same situation. Today, it's a widely practiced technique around the world. Kazakhstan became the 6th country to successfully perform this operation. It's incredibly complex, requiring a fully synchronized surgical team and flawless execution at every stage. In this case, 3 kidney transplants were performed simultaneously across 3 donor-recipient pairs.
Трансплантация 3 парам.
In essence, 3 individuals donated their kidneys, not to their own relatives, but to the loved ones of the other 2 donors. A life-saving chain built on compassion and medical precision. All 3 surgeries were completed in a single day, over the course of 12 hours. Each pair was brought in one at a time. While one transplant was being completed, the next team was already being prepped. By the end of the day, 3 lives were changed. Today, all patients, donors and recipients are home and recovering. For them, a new life has already begun, but for hundreds of others still waiting, the future remains uncertain. Not everyone has a relative who can help. Some have no family at all, others are simply incompatible. Doctors remain hopeful that more people will choose to become posthumous donors, so that even in death, they can offer someone else a second chance at life. And with each brave yes, that waiting list gets a little bit shorter.